Audio testing, 1, 2, 3. Lights on, camera rolling, and action.
Welcome to the Scaling Creator Podcast, the one-stop shop that explores problems, solutions, and stories for business-minded creators. I'm Soren Dickens.
And I'm Eriksen Dickens.
We'll be talking about everything from self-discovery, storytelling, leadership, marketing, sales, operations, and finance.
If you like a healthy dose of education mixed with a generous dash of insightful entertainment, prepare for your ears to be pleasured. Oh yeah.
Make sure to check us out at scalingcreator.com and also join our free Discord community.
Scaling Creator launching in 3, 2, 1.
The following content is not intended for all listeners, but we strongly encourage all listeners to listen regardless. We're here with Jordan Jackson. You know, last time we tried to do this whole camera thing, we knew that you were knowledgeable in real estate, but, you know, we were looking back at the footage and it was like, if you think that this is going to get you attention on social media, you should just splice up that previous interview. Oh, boy. And that's going to go viral.
Yeah, let's test it.
Be a meme, a viral meme.
I'm down. I'm kidding.
No, it was terrible.
That was a long time ago. Round 2, redemption.
I'm ready to rock.
I mean, we're rocking, dude.
No, I'm ready to rock with the content shit.
Oh, yeah. So
let's build it out.
I'm looking forward to actually taking some of the old content, though, and doing like before and after stuff.
100%.
And there's photos, there's video, there's you in front of the camera.
Yeah.
The more content you have, like ultimately, you're going to have a better base to build out your stories.
100%.
You got to keep doing that.
I feel like I know night and day difference too when it comes to like experience.
Totally, dude. I mean, even from our perspective, we're kind of seeing it from, you know, an outside view, looking back on those interviews with you joining the original team and then today and just everything you've accomplished is crazy.
It's pretty nuts.
It's nuts.
I know. I was having a conversation the other day with my dad, and parents, they message you every now and then. He messaged me and he's like, dude, I'm so proud of like how far you've come in like such a short amount of time. And I was thinking about him like, shit, like really have grown pretty fast and it's pretty cool. And then we're talking to a broker buddy of ours who started his own brokerage, and where he started the brokerage at 27, he's like almost 40 now. I'm like, 27, that's still 3 years in the future. Like we've got plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Totally.
It goes by quick, though.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. How old are you now?
27.
Yeah, there it is.
What has changed since that interview here? We're literally sitting outside the house, you know, in the mobile production van. What was that, 4 years ago?
Maybe not 4 years ago, but 3
years ago.
Solid 3 years,
least,
yeah.
3 years ago, you come over, you know?
I mean, built my entire career in the last 3 years, right? 3.5 years, so a whole lot has changed. From some like immediate exposure to the market and business and building something bigger than me, and then like where I am now, and especially within the last couple months, is completely starting over, but now having gained the experience and the exposure to the market, it's like a night and day difference, a world of a difference.
Would you say that like those 3 years have made you who you are in the business place, or would you say that, you know, growing up and your lifelong journey has made more of you as a businessman? How does that compare?
I would definitely say it was my childhood. That's kind of where like the core fundamentals were established. Last 3 years just confirmed what the childhood established.
Right.
Wasn't born, like we weren't extremely well off, but not, you know, in poverty by any means. But parents really taught me how to just like go grind and hustle on your own. If I wanted anything above like the baseline, you're going to have to go find it, go earn it yourself. And then taking that into, you know, just scaling that up over time, like bigger products, bigger items, bigger deliverables. And now look where we are. It's the most expensive thing you can sell legally.
Talk a little bit more about like growing up where you did and some of the experiences that you feel like in that environment, like how they shaped you on that course.
Yeah, so small town, Tulare, I guess in comparison to San Luis, not that small, but definitely small town, agricultural based,
Central Valley.
Community. Not a whole lot to do. And like, I was never the farm kid. I was never into any of that. So really just learning to hustle for different ventures and different items I wanted as a kid, right? You don't want things. So spent a lot of time just hustling.
Totally.
And from a young age, you know, my parents are split up, and, you know, my parents had me at 19 and 20. So my dad, you know, when I was with dad, he brought me around all of his buddies, and I got to go kick it with mid 20-year-olds who are still figuring life out themselves and kind of picking up on some golden nuggets as I was around them. It was pretty cool. So learning how to communicate with adults at that time, and like they taught me how to hustle and like, hey, go grab me a beer. It's like, I'll do it for $1, you know? So it's like just a hustle from a young age. So that led to bigger things like in my childhood. So then it became a game. I had friends who introduced me to the hustle world, and like, I would then introduce to the next friend, and then we would all kind of compete at school, right? A good friend of mine, Garrett, and I, we used to go to Smart and Final together. We'd grab some like candy and whatnot, and then we'd go back to school the next day and upsell the candy to students on the playground, and ended up doing that in leadership, doing that in snack bar at lunch, and just a way to kill time, and it was fun. It was generally fun. So
do you feel like growing up in the Central Valley, because we're from the Central Valley too, obviously, do you feel like there is more of that hustle spirit coming from a area, the entire Central Valley, that you have to generally work a lot harder in terms of like wanting to escalate yourself, wanting to get better? Do you feel like that's a trait that's kind of universal in the Valley?
Yeah, 100%. At least the people I hung out with. And whether it was the area itself or the demographic that lived there, I feel like there was, you go to some other locations in California, Southern California, Bay Area, and kids quite literally have it all. And they don't necessarily ever need to hustle. I feel like the kids in the Valley, they're like, if I even want a taste of what those kids have, like I got to hustle. I got to learn.
It's almost like, especially today with technology and like information overload, the way I've always felt is it's almost like you're in a hole. Have you been digging a hole at the beach in the sand, and the sand starts coming in on the top, and you just like literally get out fast enough? That's almost how I feel being in the Valley. Like you're literally in the Valley, you're at the bottom.
Yep.
And you have all of this new technology. You have the same access to the internet that all the people in these other places. They have more connections. They have more accessibility to like
resources.
And you just feel like it's flooding in, and so you become a really strong swimmer. You become a really strong like survivalist, in that you're like moving faster. For every like one step that they're taking, you're trying to take 10 to get ahead.
100%. Yeah.
Do you feel like you kind of still live that way?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny when I compare my work ethic versus, people who are maybe born and raised here, or even in other markets, right? San Diego, I have friends. Southern California, I have friends. And you could kind of sense this sense of entitlement that they have, and it's almost like, where's that fire? Like, have you guys not found that yet? Like, where is it? So every day, all day, regardless of what I did the month before or the year before, it's like, let's keep digging.
I always wonder why is that? And I look back at what we saw growing up and the success that we saw growing up in the Valley, and oftentimes it was people who were in agriculture. Like a lot of the big money was tied to agriculture.
Yeah.
And if you look at the way that they run their businesses, it's just like hustle, 5 a.m. feeding, or 3 a.m. irrigation.
Yep.
And I know you live that too, right?
Yep.
And you
8th grade going into high school, I was like already planning and preparing for when I turned 16. Because like when you're in the Valley, having the first vehicle is like the most exciting thing, right? So I'm like, I want a truck. I want something.
Has to be a truck.
Has to be a
Valley.
truck. Yeah.
and lifted.
And lifted. Yeah. I don't want the truck unless it's lifted. And so yeah, graduating 8th grade and going into freshman year, I'm like, Dad, Mom, like, you got to give me a job. Like, get me a job where I could work 12 hours a day, Monday through Sunday, and the highest I can earn, like whatever that is. And then we like reverse engineered the process, and like, well, what do you know? So my dad introduced me to his buddy who's super successful farmer. He's like, yeah, dude, like, I'll throw you on a tractor 12 hours a day, Monday through Sunday. Are you down? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So driving tractor, planting trees, laying drip lines in orchards, picking up trash out of orchards, spot spraying, like
Central Valley
all
shit.
of the above. Yeah.
In the dead of summer.
In the dead of summer.
120 degrees.
Like, you ever heard of a farmer's stand?
They're
real thing.
Yeah.
A real thing.
We have Jordan Burns.
Burns. But even then, that was exciting to me, because it was like that. The analogy you used earlier is like I was digging and digging and digging and digging, where everyone around me, even my friends there locally, were kind of sitting in idle. And I'm like, I got something. Like, I'm going to be 10 steps ahead of them by the time they're 16. And if I could just keep that momentum going through my life, by the time I'm 25, 30, 40, 50, where will I be in comparison? And obviously, I don't need to play the comparison game the entire time, but that was kind of my belief system at that moment. And it was like, I'm just going to work and grind to the bone, and at the very least, have some cash to go have fun with.
Yeah.
Like, and now I've created something that I can do in a town, in an area that there's nothing to do.
Sure.
So yeah, it was a fun time. Don't regret it at all.
I feel like the growing up in that environment, it gives you that respect for the laborers that we lived around, right? Like there's so many migrant workers
100%.
and like blue collar communities within the Central Valley. And I feel like maybe for a period I didn't quite understand like what went into it, but now looking back on it and growing up around it, you have such a different perspective of like what they're going through.
Yeah.
Because you were so close to it. How has that impacted who you are today?
I feel like I have a love and I cherish those who are willing to use their back instead of their head. And that was a common saying growing up. My dad beat that into me, like, hey, use your head, not your back. Use your head, not your back. You know, so when it got to the point where I graduated high school and I was trying to figure out what to do, is like, well, I could immediately just go work with my back. One, I'm going to get burnt out, die young, and, you know, hate every step of the way.
And probably have a bad back.
And have a bad back.
Yes.
Or I can kind of think outside of the box, do something I'm naturally good at, which is hustling, and figure it out as I go. So now what that's transitioned to is, you know, building a business and running and operating a successful business. Those who are doing the grunt work, the items I do delegate, I feel for them. So being able to take care of them or maybe show them a way to do the job easier is so fulfilling. It's nice. And there's a sense of respect there for that. So I don't take it for granted at all.
Now that you're, you know, older and you've kind of transitioned from job to career, how have you found, like, you know, that journey making you who you are today as a real estate agent, you know, selling big products and having like really high pressure situations? Like, tell us about where you were and how you kind of, you know, leapfrog to
The milestones.
where you're at now.
Yeah, so right out of high school, I was kind of stuck between like what to do and what I should do and what I wanted to do. And what I mean by what I should do is more so like societal pressures, what I thought people wanted me to do, which is go to school. I hate school. I suck at it. I'm not interested in anything. And then, you know, the jobs in the career field or paths that I thought about taking was like mundane and just like, okay, I put 20 years in here for what? I give them, you know, a sliver of my life, and in return I get like
401k.
an annuity, a 401k.
Yeah, they'll match that, bro.
For what? Yeah, like,
Well, so you can buy the watch and the RV.
yeah, exactly. By the
Apply for as many credit cards as you can.
Yep.
Get all the points, dude.
So that little gap, I took a year between high school and like finally like picking up where I was like kind of holding out on. And when I graduated high school, I was like, I'm gonna be a real estate agent. Like, the obvious next step.
Why real estate? Out of curiosity, like what?
Yeah. So there was a guy in my hometown that I admired. I didn't necessarily know him at the time, but I admired his lifestyle. You know, he had the wife, he had the big house, the cars, the trips, the plane, all of it. When I dug deeper, you know, my number one question, coming from, you know, blue collar working family, like my number one question was like, well, what do you guys do? So like I go over to a friend's house or I go over to somebody's house and it's like, what do you do? And like, like my parents don't do that, or I don't do that. So then it started opening up doors. So we came across this guy and I was like, finally, I get to ask him, what do you do? And he was like, oh, I sell real estate. I lead like one of the number one teams in California. And I was like, holy cow. If you don't mind me asking, what'd you make this year? And he's like, oh, we'll probably like walk away with 6 million. I was like, who's we? He's like, me and my wife. And I was like, what? And you're living in a town, in a demographic where, like, you know, average household income's 25 to 40 grand at the time. A house is 175K, cookie cutter, track home. That's the reality of
probably blew your
real
mind.
estate. Yeah, blew my mind. So to open this door, and I was, again, generally interested in sales of some sort. I didn't know necessarily what I could sell. I thought about, you know, considering I'm in the Valley, I'm like, okay, well, what about farm implements or tractors or software around farming? I could get into tech sales with farming. But then I'm like, okay, I love architecture. My grandfather was a draftsman, owned a construction company, plumbing company. It's just the natural progression. I just fell in love with architecture as a whole. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to school, so I'm not going to be an architect. The like mesh between the two would be to sell real estate. And I can still view homes, I can flip homes, I can invest in a property, I can make it mine without having the degree, without going to school, so on and so forth. So that was what really kicked it off. And then I got my first job in real estate, like 16, 17 years old, working in like, you know, the mailroom, quote unquote, and filing this soccer mom's receipts for her taxes and whatnot. And I started to see the income she made by taking the career as a hobby. And then it blew my mind even further. I'm like, holy cow, you don't even take it serious and you're earning this? What would it look like if I just went full force on this? Yeah. And then so that became my passion. That became the goal. And like since then I haven't looked back. We all get the shiny object syndrome and you're like, okay, well this thing sounds a lot more exciting than what I've got going on now. But I've been pretty good at maintaining this path and just writing it out. And I made a commitment to myself to write it out for 10 years. And what's the least that can happen, right?
That's so rare in today's world, is people actually starting something and then sticking with it.
Right.
You know, you see that with friends, peers, just people. They're not really willing to like put in the work. They want to immediately, they think they're at the bottom of the ladder. They think they should be at the top of the ladder.
Yeah.
And if they're not within 6 months, something new.
Yeah.
And then 6 months there, something new. We have friends who have had like 7 or 8 jobs and they're not even like 30.
Yeah.
Like, they're not even just jobs, but like different careers.
Yeah, it's funny. My dad and I were doing the math on how many jobs he's had in the last 40 years, or well, he's 45. So we were doing the math on like last 20 years. I think it was like over 40 different jobs that he's taken. That was firsthand the reason why I made the commitment to myself. For example, you start a new job, and let's say it's the best of the best careers, blue collar career. At 40 years old, you start a new job and you work till you're 65. That's 25 years of working. By the time you're 65, there's absolutely no way in hell you'll be able to survive on the retirement account you've created over 20 years. So then my biggest fear attached with trying to consistently find new opportunities that were scaled up, because I wasn't willing to go down. Like, I'm willing to sacrifice my peace of mind and my happiness in the moment to continue to earn more and more and more. And I know there's a fine line between like, you know, your life worth and your net worth. But at that time, that was my train of thought. If I keep pushing, there's no way that I can fail at this one thing, right? After doing that exercise with my dad, I was just like, you know, that paired with, okay, well, if I can't even live on Social Security or my retirement account, that is my biggest fear, a slave to the system. That's just not an option. So just keep pushing. And I can't fail if I don't quit.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. You should put that on a t-shirt.
I know.
I like that.
Got that from old Alex Ramosi. That was a rant, but you get the gist.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's cool. I mean, real estate's one of those things where you can also get like really creative in it, right?
Oh, 100%.
And it seems like, you know, as a creative guy yourself, you've been able to create different outlets or channels and kind of play in different markets and, you know, look at different business models. So
it's cool having that creative mind. You know, growing up, I was what I like to think of an artist and a creator in general, right? Loved photography growing up, loved drawing, loved creating just anything.
Where'd you get that from? Because in the Central Valley, there's not a lot of that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I have no idea.
It's a natural.
Yeah, it has to
cool.
be.
Yeah.
Neither my parents are creators, not the creative folk by any means. I think it was truly hanging out with my grandfather, who was a draftsman, seeing, you know, him piece together a house from the inside out on sheets of paper.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy cow, this is pretty cool. So then I started to create stuff.
As a realtor, you know, the typical approach to real estate's so cut and dry. And most people who get into it, they fail because they're not creative.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you get paid to solve problems. That's it. So the more creative you are and the bigger problems you solve, the more in return you get. It's awesome. And the further I can get creative with my business directly and the problems I solve, the more success I can create for myself, my team, my business, those around me.
From a sales perspective, how do you articulate your ability to solve those problems when you're dealing with a buyer or seller, or an investor comes to you? How do you go about articulating your value add to the problem that they're currently having, or even to the solution that they are looking for, and they don't even know what their problem is? Like, how do you even help identify that?
Yeah, I feel like just getting to the bottom of their goals, right? Like, without understanding where somebody's trying to go, how can you navigate somebody? Truly trying to figure out where they're trying to go, what they're trying to accomplish, and then setting the tone for them, giving them their platform or paving the way for them. And again, that comes from being able to just communicate with people at a deep level. You know, that's why 90% or 80% of realtors fail in their first year and they're out of the businesses, because they don't realize that you're a problem solver and you're getting in the way of a problem that was going to happen with or without you. It's just how attractive is your solution to their problem. How to articulate that, it's, you know, for the longest time, it was just kind of this fake it till you make it, right? And figure it out as you go. Like, I remember my first job, eighth grade summer. I didn't know how to drive stick shift. And my boss was like, just hop in and figure it out. And he took off. It took me like 2.5 hours. He called me a few times, chewed my ass. He's like, dude, where the hell are you? I left 2.5 hours ago. I'm like, dude, I can't figure this out, man.
Did we have YouTube at the time? You go on your phone, look at YouTube? Or
probably, yeah. But I'm just grinding gears the whole time down the road. But
drop the transmission.
But I figured it out, right? Daily, I'm hit with problems or, obstacles in the industry that I'm like, okay, I really don't have the answer for this. By having the resources around me that I do now, it's a matter of minutes before figuring out, a solution to their issue. And, then being equipped and having just a broader tool belt to be able to help service my clients over time.
How do you feel like being able to solve those problems has kind of helped you in this market here on the Central Coast compared to other markets? Because I know that as a buyer or a seller or just someone who has a bunch of money that they want to throw into a market, buying in this market's a lot different than buying in the Central Valley or 100%. Buying out of state. So how has that come into play here?
I feel like one, we have to start with competition or what other resources to a buyer, an investor, the demographic I'm working with, the avatar I'm working with, what other options do they have? In this market, it's pretty sleepy. There's not a whole lot of competition. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to capitalize on the complacency of others and be able to kind of fill that gap in the market. And then you go to other markets where much more saturated, like Central Valley, for instance, and I feel like they're touching on the wrong thing, right? They're very transactional. It's like numbers game, on to the next, on the next. Mm-hmm. They treat their clients as another cog in the wheel. And it's like, what we've tried to do is focus ourselves, if there's a problem to solve and we can solve it, we want to work with you. If we can't service you and there's no problems to solve, there's nothing for us to do. So it's on to the next. And, we don't work with everybody, right? We want to service those who kind of fit our guidelines and what our company culture is and our, what we abide by. And if we can't, then it's like, great, go find the agent that can better suit you. Mm-hmm. And we toss clients to other agents all the time because they don't fit what we're looking to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. What are like your standards in terms of when you're looking for the ideal person to help? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I had a client recently, an older gentleman who's, selling a sizable property, going to step into quite a bit of equity or some money. And the guy's pretty clueless on what to do with the money when he sells. Mm-hmm. So he's drastically downsizing after, several years of living in this massive property. And what he was looking for was somebody who can help guide him from a financial perspective in our local market. So as opposed to just me showing him standard cookie cutter homes, he wanted to know how we can continue to strengthen his equity positions over time. And his biggest fear was he was going to leave money back to his grandchildren, his daughter. They were going to be left with something that wasn't worthy of them even fighting over, Mm-hmm. What we did is we just kind of mapped out the next 3 to 5 years and understood where we are in the market today and where we're going. Got him into properties that make the most sense, not only for him, but the people who are going to inherit the property. Mm-hmm. So those are the type of avatars I like to try to attract myself to, is those who are maybe missing something in the market, right? If, and obviously I do all clients, I'll service anybody, but what my goal is moving forward is I want to service those who need that deeper layer of service and building a team around it, and where we're not viewed as just the cookie cutter glamorized door opener. We're financial service providers, inside real estate or not. For instance, I have a guy selling a property in Santa Maria, going to walk away with about $300K in cash, and he's going to go live with his family member. They're going to charge him next to nothing in rent. So he's got all this cash just sitting on the sidelines waiting for the market to drop. And I've got contractors left and right who need hard money. What I did is I connected this guy with a contractor who needed some hard money. Now he lent his $200K at 12% for the next 6 months. So now he's going to walk away with far more than $200K. So when we were discussing, my fees for selling his property, that was the one obstacle I couldn't get over. And then we thought back. I said, okay, well, what if we do this? What if I set you up with a contractor that can strengthen the velocity of your money when we sell this property? And then in 6 months or a year, whenever you're ready to buy, you now have far more than what you have today. So those are the types of scenarios I like to work out, right? And that goes back to being creative.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. It's very creative of you, John.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
And it's super cool to be able to feel that that gap in the market, because most agents aren't doing that. Not at all.
Yeah. So do you see that kind of like almost like a niche opportunity here especially on the Central Coast, where people are coming out of their properties with a lot more like cash than in other markets?
100%.
They want to rediversify that into something with a better return? Because like, what do most people do? They just like, are they 1031ing their properties, or putting it aside for retirement?
People do a million different things. You know, you have your savvy investor who will sell their property, and then they now become a hard money lender because they don't want to manage tenants. They don't want to change toilets, sinks, faucets, whatever. And so they'll lend their money out, and they'll do that every 6 months. And, you know, that keeps the rate of their money moving so much faster than throwing it into a property that's amortized over 30 years.
Or throw it into the market.
Yeah, and throw it
watch it go down 40%.
Exactly. So being able to help those people kind of navigate those transactions is money. And there's such a big market, or a big demographic here locally, that doesn't even know those services exist. And then if you think about, you know, if we're creating parallels with like, or making comparisons between here and Central Valley, the sales conversion cycles in this Central Valley, much shorter. So there's a lot less equity built up naturally. Now you take sales conversion cycles out here, and people trade every 10, 15, 20 years. So, you know, if I sat in a property that I bought at $1 million and 20 years later I sell it for $3 million, well, I have a huge chunk of change to move at that rate. So you got a lot of people sitting on a ton of money with no idea what to do with it next.
Right.
From an agent's perspective, you know, even as an investor yourself, how do you kind of assess those deals for the client? Like, where'd you build that network of people who need hard money? Yeah, what do those deals look like? Just kind of tell us a little bit more about that, because I know we work a lot with financial advisors, and we're working in and out of like RIAs, wealth management companies, who are very heavily diversified across equity markets, some alternative funds, universal life insurance policies, things that are very conventional. And when you say 12% hard money lending coming out of a property, anyone who owns a property who knows they're going to have a surplus of cash, their ears are going to perk up.
100%.
So what does that process look like? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so from the get-go, it's defining what their goals are. Like I mentioned before, it's hard to navigate help navigate somebody's financial journey without understanding where they're trying to go. You know, I have investors who are looking for cash flow, and I have investors that are looking for equity only, and I have investors that want just a happy medium between the both. So really understanding what it is that they're looking for prior to going any further, digging into their assets. That's our number one question is, you know, what are you focused on? And obviously this is more in depth, but are you cash flow, or are you appreciation? Well, I'm cash flow. Okay, great. Well, I'm looking here and you have 12 properties in California. Virtually impossible to cash flow in California in today's market with where rates are today. So the conversation then goes to, okay, well, are you open to investing out of state? Then we help them help facilitate investments out of state that can practically print money on a month-to-month basis, where then I have other younger investors, you know, folks our age, who are solely looking for one thing, and that's appreciation. Look, I live a comfortable lifestyle. I have an excess of cash coming in. I want to park this in a vehicle that I know is safe, sound investment. Where is that? Well, that's here in our backyard.
What actually brought you out to the Central Coast to begin with?
Yeah, so not very deep or much meaning behind it. We, as every other person from the Valley, came out here for vacation growing up. You know, this was heaven as a kid, right? As soon as I graduated, I was like, well, I know a shit ton of people that go to school here. If idea one fails, well, like I can couch surf for months on end until I figure my shit out. That was the plan. It was like, okay, well, I knew I was getting into real estate, and I'm like, okay, I can stay in the Central Valley where average deal size is about 225 at the time, or I can move out to the Central Coast where average deal size is 775, 800 all day long. And there's really no cap to what the properties go to. You know, you have this select few homes in the Central Valley that are in the millions, but out here that's like my average deal size, right, is several $1 million. So it was an obvious next step. It was comparing the two and saying, okay, well, where can I make more money to get me to my goals quicker? And that was here. And I love it here too. So it was like a double-edged sword. Yeah. Why not?
And you met us.
And then I met you guys.
You remember how you met us?
And my life was ever since.
We ruined it for you.
You guys ruined it. Yeah, I do remember how it's so funny how the world works. I I get a message this morning from a gal I used to work in an office with in Oro Grande. And this is like right around the time I met you guys. And I'm sitting in my office and my boss just got off the phone chewing my ass. The whole office sat in there listening to this call. And this girl goes, hey, you remind me of this like page I saw on Instagram. It's called Hustle Something. I can't even think of the name. She's like, just go look into it. You remind me of these guys and I think they'd be your friends. And I'm like, huh. So I go on the page. First guy you see is Abel Contreras. I'm like, holy this guy's a real estate agent. I'm a real estate agent. He's got it going on, or it seemed to be like he had it going.
Yeah.
So I shot him a DM. I need 5 minutes of your time to figure what the hell am I doing wrong? What are you doing that I'm not? So he hopped on a 5-minute call with me, didn't ask me to pay him. And he's like, it was like 3 sentences and he hung up. He's like, well, what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? And I'm like, well, I'm making calls. And he's like, okay, well, do you have a dialer? And I'm like, no, a dialer? I didn't even know what a dialer was.
What is that?
He's like, how the are you making calls? I'm hand dialing. And I'm making 300 of these a day. And he's like, dude, get a dialer. Get free data from a title company and set appointments. They're like, you ever gone on an appointment? I was like, appointment for what? He's like, a listing appointment. I'm like, no. He's like, all right, dude, go do these things and call me back. 2 or 3 weeks go by. You guys had some like opening event or something going on at your house. I DM'd Soren or Abel, one of the two, and you guys were like, all right, hey, we're watching the fights. We're going to have the neighbors over. Why don't you come over and come check out the pad?
The Hustle Hive.
The Hustle Hive. Yeah, not the pad.
Back then, there was Hustler House, but yeah.
Yeah, Hustler House before you guys were
sued.
Before you're sued.
Almost got that lawsuit, but yes.
And so I show up to the Hustle House, just a bunch of young bucks grinding. And I'm like, this is such an unconventional way to live, but I want in. Like, how the do I get in?
Yeah.
And then 6 months go by. I don't even hear from you guys ever again. And Abel shoots me a text 2 weeks before you guys have a roommate moving out. He's like, hey, bro, it's yours if you want it. I'm like, I'm in. I'm in.
And did the Hustle Hive live up to your expectations when you moved in? Was it everything that you dreamed, hoped, and imagined?
It's
it kind of fell off.
Yeah. So it definitely was nothing I thought.
Some characters
go into this. I'm thinking, holy, I really gotta step up my game. Like everyone around me's got it figured the out, and like these guys are real. And then I start like peeling back the onion, and I'm like, oh like they're still figuring out too.
Sure,
like I shouldn't feel so bad about my situation. It completely died off. But the value that I got from just simply being around you guys, I'll never forget it. I had a conversation with my dad. At the time, I'm living in a garage, paying $350 a month with one of my best friends, and I had to make one of the toughest decisions ever. Leave my best friend who was going through, trying to build his real estate career side by side with me, or move in with these guys I've never met. I took a chance, and I went from paying $350 a month to $1,000 a month, and I remember I get off the phone with my dad, and I'm like, my buddy Jason, he's like, hey, so what'd your dad say? My dad said I'm a idiot if I make a move going from paying $350 a month to $1,000 to live with these guys I don't even know. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe 2 months go by consistently working with Abel, and I closed my first deal and I got $8,000. And it was just this huge sigh of relief, like, this really paid off, man.
It was the right move. I'm glad you did too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad I did. It was funny. I was kind of comparing where my life would have gone.
Right.
Sure. It was like a hard right or a hard left. It would have been quite literally the difference of a world of a difference, man. And for real, so thankful for you guys.
That was, meeting you and just getting you in our network and stuff, I would say one of the best things that came out of the whole Hustle Hive.
Sure.
The experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For sure. And everything you said, like you were attracted to us through that one gal who told you.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes back to just the power of like storytelling, and the power of perception. Because back then, like you said, once you peeled the onion back, you realized that we were all still figuring it out as well.
Yeah.
But we crafted the story, not that it was all BS, because we did have stuff going on, but it goes to show like the power of content, the power
100%.
of positioning yourself in a place of authority, and that's something that we try to do and create a story out of it, create something that's like engaging.
Yeah.
Did you just out of curiosity, do you remember what you saw on Hustle Hive? Like what episode? Was it like?
No, so I became obsessed with it. It was weird because I was like, what is this? Like, what even is this? And I'm like, so my goal at that time, I was helping random boutiques and salons scale their business. And I saw you guys doing it at a much larger scale, and I'm like, dude, they have the recipe that I'm looking for, and if I could just get around them. So I sifted through everything. I mean, everything. Like, I was going back through your page, back through your followers, through your page, through your followers, through equities, through Abel's, through everyone's. And then I just followed along the journey. I was commenting on everything. I was like engaging with, you know, with other followers, and it was like, dude, this is such a badass community, because it was something I wanted to create. And now, like, being surrounded in it is just natural, like, bound to happen.
It's so funny, like, looking back on it, man, and really, like, to your point, it really is you coming around probably the only thing that really we still have from it today. I mean, everything that we built in the local community has changed. I mean, obviously the, you know, dynamic between people has changed, but like, it's one of those things where you kind of see it for what you see it as, like a education opportunity. You see it as a learning experience, and that's like,
and you know, you asked me a question earlier, like, where were these fundamentals created? And a lot of it was from living with you guys and like just being surrounded in it. And I think, you know, my first 3 weeks in the house, I was home alone like the entire time. And I'm like,
I remember that.
Dude, I'm doing nothing. And these guys are out hustling, getting it, grinding. Like, you're in another state every 3 days. And I'm like, holy cow. It just really set the tone for what I should be doing. And now I've kind of replicated that same thing with my house. And like, I've got some of my childhood friends living with me, and just pouring into them and like creating the same kind of atmosphere and like, giving them their platform. And I feel like that's what you guys did for me.
See, that's really interesting you say that, because I feel like that depends on the type of person, but that can go 2 different ways. Like, when you're surrounded with a bunch of people who are out doing things, who are maximizing their talents, that can do 2 things. One, they can scare the shit out of someone and make them more scared, make them feel, oh man, I'm not good enough, I don't like this environment, I don't feel uplifted here or whatever. Or it can have the effects that it had on you, which is motivate you more. Want to like make yourself at that level as well, elevate yourself. So that's always 100%. Been interesting to me. Like, when you're surrounded with a bunch of people that are, you know, pedal to the metal, it goes 2 ways. So I feel like you know, the road diverged and you chose the right path. I mean,
100%. Yeah, it was funny because before I moved in, I wasn't doing much. I was, you know, for lack of better terms, a bum. And, you know, like,
you had a roof over your head.
Yeah, I had a roof over my head. I was still trying to do but with regard to my business and this whole plan for getting into real estate, it was just like, I think in 2 years I made 16 grand total. 12 of it was from real estate photography.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm just like, holy cow, man, this isn't sustainable. And like, I knew I was maybe not better than that, but I knew I wanted more, and I could obtain more if I just found the right people to help guide me or catapult me. And it was the pullback that I needed at the time. It's crazy because, what you said is so true, and I'm surrounded by it every day. People in the business, people that I bring on to the team or bring into my life in general. I'm doing me, regardless of anyone around me. And those who want a piece of it are attracted by it. It rubs off on them, right? Those who are afraid of it run the opposite direction. And it's almost a blessing in disguise, because oftentimes if you can avoid surrounding yourself around the people that you're not attracted to, then you can continue to maintain this path, right? Where you want to go. But if you start letting time sucks in your life and people who are going the opposite way, it's like, okay, well, now I'm kind of conforming to their ways, and this is against everything I've wrote for myself. So it's a blessing in disguise, because it filters out the weak, and then it makes those around you just 10 times stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we were trying to do, man, with Hustle High. It really was just trying to like draw people in, you know, pull people into the ecosystem, and that, like, you get so much more out of pouring into people, because you're like educating, you're learning, you're moving, and they're questioning, and they're developing, and they see things completely differently. You'll give them a bit of information, and then they'll look at that information and they'll give you feedback that you've never even thought of. And that's really important, especially when you bring creative people together. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do.
I'm kind of stress testing that model now, you know, with my buddies. You know, I was living in a 2-bedroom condo like 2 years ago, and a badass spot. And it was just me and one other guy that I worked with. I need a bigger spot. Like, I need more energy around me. The guy that I was living with was a little low in energy, nothing against him, just, you know, different strokes for different folks. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go sign this lease blindly to this new spot. I'm going to move 2 high energy guys into this property. I'm going to pour everything I can into them. And they're both super successful in real estate now. And then now we kind of feed off of one another, but I'll draw a conclusion to something and then he'll be like, dude, you're in left field, I'm in right. How did you get there? And then we can kind of meet in the middle or take pieces from one another's point of view. But I'm doing that with a student from Cal Poly right now. It's so cool to be able to pour into him and then see what he's giving back and how much he's grown in such a short amount of time. I mean, it's awesome. So what you guys are doing with this whole thing is so sick. And it's awesome to be a part of it.
We worked with a client not too long ago, and his whole life motto was an open hand is always full. So it's like, if you're willing to give, whether that's knowledge or whatever that might be, it's like, so you're going to get something back from that, whether that's 100%. Intrinsically, whether that's the universe rewarding you with something, whatever it might be, good karma, whatever you want to call it. That motto kind of always stuck with me from that client that we worked with. And I think that's relevant to what you're saying right now.
100%. And I think it's so cool. I love giving. The more you give, like you said, the more you receive. And it's not that you look to receive, but you get fulfillment from giving.
Yeah, whether that's not like learning, like you get something back and he has a new perspective and you have a perspective, you meet in the middle and
exactly.
Boom, fireworks.
Yep. It's also like a way to stay super innovative because you're limited to your own perspective. And as you start to diversify your organization and your business, you start to pull these different perspectives and other people's opinions start to just value add to your organization. And at a certain point, it almost creates like this flywheel of ideas and different perspectives. And you can start to weed out the bad ideas or the ideas that people don't agree on. And usually, like, aside from the narrative society's feeding you, usually when people start to think a certain way, it's the right way.
Right. One of my favorite humans, Ray Dalio, talks about an idea meritocracy. You know, that's in his book. That's his philosophy for scaling his fund. And it's just a meeting of the minds, not excluding any one idea at all ever. And the more ideas, the better, right? Because you can get to a greater end goal.
As far as like self-discovery goes, though, you know, that's one thing that, at least from our experience growing up in the Central Valley, self-discovery and being very reflective on yourself, your intentions, your past, those are not things that are very important to the daily, you know, consumer daily lives of the, you know, life in the valley.
The average show.
Yeah, you know, it's not that important. And there's a reason why. And it's respectable too. Like, most of the time you're spending time in the field or you're spending time doing blue collar jobs. You don't have time to self-reflect. But as a high performer yourself, how do you feel like your intention and also your investment into your self-discovery has changed from, you know, being a teenager to now? Like, obviously that's a deep question, but it's, you know, think about it. How have you like prioritized understanding yourself, Jordan Jackson, understanding your abilities, what you enjoy doing, what you're really good at? How do you feel like you've changed over the years now that you've found societal success? How do you feel like you've been able to kind of step back and be like, I'll do that, or I don't want to do that because it doesn't make me happy? Yeah. How do you prioritize that stuff?
I think it's been like a part of me that's always been stubborn, always just super hard-headed. It's my way or the highway. Oftentimes, you know, we're all kind of in our own way and we think like, okay, my initial thought's the only way and the right way. As I mature, it's like there are times where I f up, where I make wrong turns, make mistakes. Being able to just reflect immediately, admit to it, so that way down the road I don't feel shame, I don't feel guilt, and then getting over it and moving on. And I do that every single day. So I got a call today. This is a perfect example.
Good. We like examples.
Yeah. I get a call today and this guy's got broken English calling me on a property and he's like, man, I can't hear you. I can't understand you. And I'm like, no, not even worth my time. And then we're on our way to an appointment and I look over at the guy I'm going to an appointment with and I'm like, all right, man, this is bad juju, man. Called the guy back. He was a sweetheart and we got to the bottom of why he was calling and now I picked up another buyer. So it's those little things that have happened in the past that remind me when I go to lash out or act in a way that I don't like to reflect and go the way I should.
It's super important because a lot of people lack that fundamental ability to reflect.
Yeah.
You know, they just act, they just move, kind of lifeless in a sense. They just...
like a pinball.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so funny because most people will have this perceived value of themselves that's drastically inflated. And like, you know, you get people that fold under pressure in public because they're so concerned of what other people think of them when the reality is 99.9% of people don't even see them.
If they do, they don't care.
They don't give a
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I've just embodied that. And it's like, I'm going to do me and what makes me happy. I don't give a what the next person thinks.
Yeah.
And with respect, right? In an honorable way. But I've lived like that my entire life. I'm training with a guy, Dr. Paul Stoltz, and we did this exercise the other day, and he put on a line graph. And he said, you have your net worth and you have your life worth here, right? And he said, where do you think you are? And I'm like, oh, I'm like 0 of both. Like, yeah, sure, I have some fulfillment, so I'm a little further on my like life worth than I am on my net worth. And then maybe I've made some money and some success, so I'm a little up here, but I'd like to be like way up here. And he's like, yeah, well, I was just on the phone with 4 billionaires before you walked in. And we want to know where they are? Life worth or net worth maxed out. And I was like, holy so they've sacrificed everything that means anything to them in their life for more money. So I made a promise and a commitment to myself to between 5 to 10 pillars that I have that drive my life worth, to never sacrifice one of those for net worth.
Would you mind sharing what those pillars are?
Yeah. So like one of them, for instance, is creativity, right? Being creative, health. I went through a extremely depressive rut for about 2 years right out of high school because I was comparing myself to my friends who were off playing D1 college sports. It was a dark time in my life, and I was like, yeah, how do I pull out of this, right? So one of my buddies, I went over to his house, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just like wallowing in my own, sorrow. And he's like, dude, I'm going to the gym. Either you could come with me or, f off. Why don't I go with you?
Yeah.
First time ever hitting the gym. And I got in there, and like, after I hit the gym, I stepped into a new realm. Everything that I was worried about when I entered the gym completely disappeared. So it was this kind of God moment, you're in a, God, get me out of this and I'll never smoke cigarettes again. God, get me out of this and I'll never do X again. It was one of those things where I was like, I will never sacrifice the gym training movement and my health for anything. And every time I'm feeling depressed, anxious, overworked, I just go hit the gym or I go have, some fun outdoors, get active, and suddenly everything disappears.
Yeah. It's like a natural drug, a healthy drug.
Health was one of my biggest pillars. And I noticed last year for like 6 months, I was trying to gain some weight, and I was working a lot. If anyone knows anything about the real estate market, the last 2.5 years were insane. We're going on anywhere from 5 to 10 appointments per week. Sometimes, 3 appointments in a day. You're up all night. You're taking phone calls at 10. You're at the office again by 8, 9 o'clock the next day, which is super fun. I paired that busy schedule with trying to gain weight in a short amount of time. And I ended up getting fat and overweight and unhealthy. And so that all the started to snowball. I realized I was sacrificing my health for my net worth and making more money. And like the efforts that were put into making more money were subpar because I was unhealthy. Right. My relationships around me started to deteriorate, and I'm just like, okay, well, how do I pull myself out of this? So I hired a trainer who I've now been working with for 9 months, guy out of the UK, and it's an accountability coach. And I'm just like, the health is my number one pillar that I'll never sacrifice for my net worth.
Interesting you say that, because the same client who we worked with a long time ago, who said the thing that I said earlier, he said, you can repair a lot of things. I forgot how he actually put it, but he basically said, life is like a bunch of juggling balls. You have this thing, that thing, this thing. And if you drop it, the ball will bounce back. But health is kind of one of those things where if you get to a point, you drop it, that ball might not come back. Yeah. So that always stuck with me as well.
We're not getting younger either.
Right. You just get older and stuff.
And it's funny because you get older, and at least in my experience, it's like as I age, the things that I do to my body are more damaging because I find new creative ways to damage my body. And it's like,
you're right.
Holy like it's a double entendre. I'm myself royally. Yeah. Health is my driving force. If I can stay healthy, and that's mentally too. That's not just physically. It's like
you're very connected.
Mentally is my biggest thing. So going back to your point, how do I self-reflect? It's knowing that I have a mental weakness or had a mental weakness. In order to overcome that, it was just like constantly self-reflecting over and over and over again, and being okay with not being okay. You know what I mean?
It's super important, man.
Yeah.
Especially balancing that life worth and net worth and the social pressures that we feel being young and in that environment, and seeing what's on social media and being constantly under the knife of society, but also as a man, like being under the knife of being a man and having to be successful to attract women and be successful to fit in this world where it is easy to make money. You can make money in so many ways these days. Yeah. And not only is it easier to make money, but it's easier to show people that you're making money.
Correct.
And it's not that you have to go out of your way to show people that you're making money, but just by the way you dress, what car you drive, what you like, what watch you have on your wrist. Like you can show people that you're making money, and it's very easy. And I think we could all agree that we've seen this, very closely recently. That lifestyle will catch up to you if you don't balance your life worth and
100%.
destroy you.
100%.
Yeah, I think a lot of people too, if they're not careful, a lot of people younger, they can fall into that trap of kind of falling victim to that whole online internet guru grind until your face falls off.
Yep.
Forget your health. If you're not suffering 24/7, you're not doing it right. That's
and it goes
fall
back
for
to
that.
our story, directly to our story. It's like I saw one thing online, and not that it was so far misconstrued from the reality.
Mm-hmm.
However, there were some things that were like, okay, well, there's this, this isn't what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this sense of self-reflection that you have, a sense of awareness that you have to have in today's world to be able to sift through the and it's like, okay, so getting up every morning at 5 a.m. and making my bed first thing,
Cold
meditating
shower.
and cold shower. It's like, that is not going to lead to success. Like
No.
doing the unattractive, unsexy grind is going to make you successcul. Like
Right.
you brushing your teeth 3 times on the left, 3 more times on the right every morning for, it's all this glamorized fluff and be conscious,
Right.
The reason why, though, that stuff sells so hard on social media is because in reality, it's so easy.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get out of bed and hop in a cold shower compared to like getting on the phone and dialing. Like, you think about it, what's like getting on the phone and dialing your CRM is so much harder than, there's so much more skill and like psychology and repetition that is required and trial by error that's required to do a skill like that. What's sold online is get out of bed, hop in your cold plunge, meditate, read 5 pages, work out for 75 days straight, don't drink alcohol. All these very which is funny, putting you in a box.
Yep.
Where in reality, your mind rejects that stuff, and all those people who are like living by that lifestyle don't want to be put in a box.
100%.
Like, break free of the matrix, but I'll follow all these rules.
And not to get like too far off on a tangent, but it's very similar to religion. If you don't live by these guidelines, you will do X, Y, and Z, or you will be viewed as X, Y, and Z. And that's so far off from the truth and reality, right? If you don't live by these guidelines, you are going to be viewed as this in your workplace. Wrong. I'm a believer in do whatever the you want that is going to get you to the end goal where you want to go. And it's like, if waking up at 4:30 a.m. every single morning and making your bed first thing and hopping in a cold shower is the thing, go do it. You don't have to be so naive and oblivious to what will actually get you there. It's like, just do the work.
Yeah.